Basically, I guess we would call it a international bestseller from late antiquity. It's a famous story. It appears in the Quran, but it's in its earliest version, is called the story of the sleepers of Ephesus, or the seven sleepers. Oftentimes you see that as well. The story of the sleepers of Ephesus is kind of this really nice hagiographical pious tale. It's a Rip Van Winkle tale. It's about these youths that are they convert to Christianity during a time of persecution, and they flee persecution by going into a cave, and they fall asleep. And then one of the youths wakes up, and when he goes to explore the world has been transformed. People are converted to Christianity, etc. It's a really famous story about kind of the mystery of God's providence. So we don't know the exact origins of the story. I think the modern scholarly opinion is that the sleeper story originates in Ephesus in the late 5th century. So it's written in Greek or Syriac. We don't really know, but emerges from this region. This is part of the Eastern Roman Empire at the time, mostly Greek-speaking, a lot of Syriac speakers as well. But what we do know is that by the time we get to the 500s, we have at least 3 versions of the story circulating in Syriac, in a work by Suda Zacharias of Mytilene. We have it in a memory, or a kind of a verse poem of Jacob of Sarug written in Syriac, and also the writings of John of Ephesus. And interestingly enough, we get a pretty early example of the story all the way in Gaul. It's written by Gregory of Tours. He actually gives 2 versions of the story. One of the most fascinating things about Gregory of Tours is he actually tells us where he gets the story from. When he's giving the story of the 7 sleepers, he tells us that he heard it from a Syrian. Right, so we do know, for example, at least for Gregory of Tours, when he's writing his version of the story in Latin, that it's coming from the East. He probably hears it from a Syriac speaker or someone that speaks in Greek that conveys it to him, which he then writes it in Latin. Probably one of the most far-flung locations that we find it appearing in is in Bactria. We have a Sogdian version that was discovered in Torfan that dates the late 500s. So we have already, by the 600s, this story that has spread and exists in 4 versions, mostly relying upon Christian networks. But the interesting thing is, of course, is what's the next place that it appears? It appears in the Quran as well, where it's called the story of the companions of the cave, not the story of the sleepers, but the stories of the companions of the cave, which probably appears in the Quran in 622, where someone asks the Prophet Muhammad about the story, seemingly in order to test them, and he gets a revelation about the story of the companions of the cave. So one question we might ask is, could the story of the Prophet Muhammad and his revelation traveled and went far and wide like this story? Is it possible? And one of the things that's fascinating about the way that this story travels is not only does it travel geography, it also travels languages, right? Not only is it known in like Greek and Syriac and Sogdian and Latin, it's also known eventually in Arabic as well. As a matter of fact, when it enters into the Arabic language, thanks to the Quran, it's probably the Arabic version of the story that is most well known on a global scale. Let's be thinking about the story from another perspective, right? We can ask, maybe one story is not influenced